Hi, all you early birds. Thank you for joining the webinar. We'll get started shortly. Gold stars, and go ahead and multitask for a little bit. Hi, everybody. Gold stars for showing up early. We'll get started in a couple minutes. Go ahead and multitask. Thanks. Hi, everybody. This is Ann, the moderator for today's webinar. We will get started in just a second. Thank you for joining early. Hi, everybody. This is Ann, the moderator for today. We're going to get started in just a second. We're going to give a couple more people a chance to join. Thank you very much for joining on time or even early. Talk to you in a couple minutes. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's Customers First Now CX Leader Series event. We typically hold these webinars monthly on a variety of customer experience topics and try, when possible, to have our customers present on the topics. In today's session, you will hear from Carrie Nelson, CEO and President of Customers First Now, discussing how to create a quick win scorecard to ensure you are looking at the most impactful touch points using the right data. Before we begin, just a few key things. We are recording today's session for future download and replay purposes. You will receive an email from the company with links to access the recording. Anytime during this session, you can submit your questions by going to the Q&A panel on your WebEx control panel, select Ask Host, and enter your question into the box. When you are done entering it, click Send. You can send as many questions as you like, and we will try to answer as many as time allows. The presentation will be made available after this to anyone who requests it through the same Q&A panel or by replying to the email that we send out after the session. If you want it, you can put your name in the Q&A panel, and we will send the electronic file over to you. Thanks for joining us today. And now I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. So today, as Ann said, our agenda is going to be really around how to identify those metrics that matter the most, how to really look at all the data you collect today, because having been a CX leader myself, I know how hard it is. Sitting there and, there's 200-plus metrics that the organization's looking at, and that's probably minimum number of metrics. So we're going to talk about how to do this and an approach that I personally have gone through, and customers of ours have also gone through. So something that you can adopt yourself too. So what we're going to do first is we're going to really look at all the different data that you do collect today, and then how to get to the priorities from those data points, techniques for prioritizing. So then it's trying to really think about how do we prioritize all of these key pain points and moments of truth. I'll talk a little bit about some best practices around a quick win scorecard, and also talk about why I call it a quick win scorecard. And then lastly, just learnings on, how to really engage people, both customers and team members, as you roll this out. So let's start with the data piece, because this is really exciting. So it can also be overwhelming. There's lots of data as a CX and a customer success executive or leaders that we all face. We have complaint data, we have customer service data, we have things coming in our website, social media, cancellation data. All of this data is great data. As long as it's data that is triggered by a customer complaining, customer calling into customer service, customer giving feedback on social media. Again, being really clear that it's not a measurement that internally, and I've had this many, many times where, my teams, I'll take product delivery, where they're capturing a metric that says, what % are we on time of delivering our product? And they're tracking it based on internal triggers, nothing to do with the customer. And what we saw was we had a score of like 95% on-time delivery. So what we did is we checked that metric by asking the customer. So we would, after we deliver product, we would ask them, did you get your product on time as expected? And the number was 44%. So the difference of what the customer told us and what we were measuring was really off. So again, it's really look at your operational data, but from the customer perspective. I'm going to talk a little bit how to organize this. So as we go through it, you're going to have operational data. You're going to have potentially journey map. If you're doing journey mapping, that's great. That's another way to look at your pain points and moments of truth. So thinking about your end-to-end customer experience, where do things really matter to them? There's value, it's important, it's personal, it makes them want to stay with you. And then where are things very painful where, this isn't working today. So you're really trying to look at that overlap in your touch points when you think about journey mapping. Where does it really matter and where is it really painful? those are the ones that you really want to capture as part of a metric to track overall. So Journey Map's another great tool to use. Many of us, have used surveys. Surveys are a great way, again, to ask the customer what they think. Let them rate us, let them give us comments. But again, this is what they're saying, not necessarily what they're doing. So it's really important to make sure that we know what they say and understand that. So we could have, I remember one example of one of my companies I was leading. We had a lot of comments specifically about the amount of data we were collecting. So we were a data company. And it was about, we didn't have enough data in certain countries. Now, that was the majority of the information coming in negative. If we would have taken that as the moment of truth and the pain point, we would be trying to fill in gaps in Argentina and Peru and all these different countries we were getting complaints on. But that wasn't, as we looked at what they rated us and then what they did from a financial, we're going to talk about the financial side of it, we saw that the actual most important driver was it accurate data and was it timely data, was it fresh? Not a matter of how much we had. So it really got us, again, to think about the survey data is very good directionally to help you identify where you have to work on. But again, as we think about layering on financial data, so if we look at your financial data, which we will get to, it really helps you then solidify, again, that's another data source you need to use. So the next other set of data is really linking to the business, brand, and business strategy. The thing I will always say, and I've done this well and I've done this poorly over the years, is, you run a CX program or customer success, and it's, it starts off as either a catalyst for change, or there's a problem, or there's just something to fix, and it becomes a project or an initiative. It's not truly a real strategic program. So the thing to always remember is whatever you do, and creating a scorecard that you measure needs to really link back to, both the brand of your company, like what do you go out and advertise? What do you go out and say you're all about as a company? What is your company's strategy all about? Is it growth? Is it cross-selling? Is it new customers? I mean, ensure that whatever you're measuring from a CX is linked to both of those things, because you want your program to be sustainable over time, so really critical. And here, we just illustrate, what some companies will do is come up with some design principles that are based on the brand and the strategy. So here we have 5 examples of design principles that help you keep your CX program very connected. And again, this also ensures as you come up with metrics, do the metrics reinforce these design principles? So it's a way to bring everything and link everything together. And then the last really critical piece, as I've mentioned a couple times, is the financial data. Ensure that as you think about the metrics and you're bringing them together, that they're truly linked to not just what the customer does, but what they say, but what they do. So, churn, cancellations, growth, usage, cross-sell, all are very good indicators to link back to your customer experience scorecard. So let me give you an example of how to use all this data. So we're going to go to how do you bring it all together? So you have all this data, and now you're thinking, okay, yeah, I got all this data. And a way to do this is take all the metrics. So, and I'll use a recent example. We had an example where we captured over about 230 metrics, operational metrics that the business was measuring. And we looked at those metrics and we said, and this is the approach I would offer everyone. Take your operational metrics and then take these different elements that we just talked about. What's your journey map telling you? What's your survey data telling you? Is it an external or internal facing metric? Would a customer care? That should be the first one. So if you even look at the example I have here, very small print, but the point is, we have all these metrics. You have, but then you say, is it customer facing or not? Yes or no. Is it a moment of truth pain point on your journey map? Yes or no? Is it one of your top complaint items? Yes or no? Is it one of your top customer service reasons they call you? Yes or no? You're trying to get and prioritize and get to a smaller list. That's your goal. How do you synthesize this from 230 to 28 or 10 to start with, so that you can start to really drill down? So, what I would say is you inventory every metric you're measuring that you think is customer, impactful, and then decide what those yes/no criteria questions are. And I've given you some examples of what I would use, but again, these are ones, again, reinforce your strategy, yes or no, reinforces your brand, yes or no. And then that way you take the ones that have the most yeses, clearly, and that becomes the ones you really start to then get together as a team and start to prioritize, and I'll show you how you can do that. So first is this piece that you want to prioritize, inventory those metrics, come up with the criteria, I gave you some examples, and then come up with a shorter list. Then what's really fun to do, because I think all of this, so that's really the quantitative side of it. So that you can do is a data gathering exercise. It's very quantitative and objective. That's what you want. Now you want to bring a group of people that actually own these metrics in a room, and you want to really start to map against, something like this. So I always look at have one axis, so it's your typical 2x2. So you have one axis that says high delight, high NPS, or low, and then you have an other axis that gets to easy and hard. Here it gets to my whole point of calling it a quick win scorecard. There is so much to do when you think about a customer success or a CX program that you want to have some quick wins. You want to have some things that you can get done within a 6-month, 3-month period to show people that there are things that are low-hanging fruit that will make a difference for your customers. And so that's why I use one of the axes as an easy or hard, because if it's easy, meaning, there's not going to take a lot more investment, you got the resources to do it, you can do it within a 3 to 6 month period, that's easy. So what you do then is you create your 2x2, you have people that, own these parts of the business in a room, and you start to prioritize. So if we go to, the example here is, you can see, in this example, we did a whiteboard exercise. And we took those top 28 metrics that we had already quantified and in an objective way based on those yes/no questions. And then we said, well, where do these rest of these 28 fit? Or if we were missing a metric based on what we were looking at, we added one in. So you can see here what we were ultimately looking at is getting in that upper left-hand corner. That upper left-hand corner ended up being the quick win scorecard, the 8 to 10 metrics that we actually then used in the scorecard. If we go to the next one, I think we have, well, we're going to look at an example of this. So now, you can see on the right-hand side is, again, an example, a framework that you can use. Now, these are the principles by which I live by with scorecards, and I've done these myself in very big global organizations. And the thing you want to do is when you keep it very simple so everyone understands it. I'm very big on 2 colors, either it's red, it's not on track, or it's green, it's on track. Now, the hard thing for any human being is to be that definitive. And the thing I would always say is, when I've rolled out red and green scorecards, there's always another color trying to sneak its way in, gray, yellow, amber. And the reason is because, we want to say that, well, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not all the way there, but I'm not actually, needing a lot of help. The problem with that is, by example of anyone that drives and that you see a yellow light. And I always ask this question, raise of hands, what do people do when they see yellow? And here's the response I see. How many go faster? Half the room raises their hands. How many go slower? A quarter of the room raises their hand. How many does it depend? The other quarter raises their hands. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't drive consistent behavior. So we all do something different, depending. And you do not want that in your scorecard. You do not want there to be a middle ground. It's either I'm on track or I'm not on track, but I'm working to get on track. So red and green, very important to drive behaviors. It is hard to do, but you can get people to do it over time as long as you really are clear that red is not bad. It's like you're doing something very hard, you're making progress, and that's why we also use, try to use trends in here too. 8 to 10 metrics, do not go further than 10. It's, it becomes really, it becomes very hard for you then as a leader to say, well, we're really focused and we have 40 metrics. That's not focused. 8 to 10 is very focused, and it's very clear what you're focused on, what you're doing, and, again, we all have a lot on our plate, so you want to keep this very tight. Because you're also, as we talk about communication, there's a really broad way to communicate this. The third best practice, make sure they are outside in, that when you share it with a customer, they say, yep, I totally get it. They're really working on the right things, and this matters to me. Now, I will tell you, when I've initially rolled these out and shared them with customers, the first thing my sales team members will say to me is like, well, you can't tell a customer that. And the thing I respond back to is, well, they know. They know that this is a problem. So this isn't about putting, the phrase lipstick on a pig. This is be transparent, be clear, and be honest. And customers will appreciate this and give you credit for taking a stand and making progress in an area that needs to be worked on. And then the last best practice is high will owners. I think sometimes we focus on get the right person with the skill set, they know customer service well, let's put them in, the obvious person on the obvious metric. I tend to do the opposite. I actually put the person that maybe doesn't know everything about speed of answer for phone calls on that particular metric, because if they're a high-will leader, someone that's high potential, very results-oriented, a good thinker, has demonstrated the ability to get things done, that's a great person to help think differently about how do you improve the speed by which you answer phones from 2 minutes to 10 seconds, or whatever the from to is. So, it's not always about high skill. It's like if you get the person that's motivated and talented at many things, they're a good person to have on some of these metrics. And so then as we just look at, some of the learnings and best practices, I would just close and then open it up for questions is, we talked about the high will owners. I think the other key one here is make sure there's a forum of something, some governance, some steering team that you're bringing together. This is a great content piece. This is where then you can bring the owners of these metrics together, share what they're doing, where they need help, where, they're making progress, where are the best practices they're seeing, and give people exposure. So have a forum to bring this in as a key content piece, the owners of it, with your leadership. Great content on that. Share the results and the wins with your team members. I mean, this is one where internally, I would use these scorecards in every chance I could and not create necessarily new communications, but I would integrate it in other things that were going out in the business, whether it was a CEO message or it was a welcome message to new colleagues, or it was just a quarterly all hands that the other leaders were doing, and I would give them a couple of slides to present this. So you really want to integrate this internally so that people start to see it and recognize it as your company's focus on the customer and how they're all playing a critical role. Linking the goals and compensation is really key too. So again, if you're going to do a scorecard like this, you need to make it matter, not just communicating it, but you're doing something about it in people's goals and bonuses and whatever that looks like from your performance management. And then lastly, as I've said, I have always shared these with customers, whether that's following a survey as a thank you and just sharing here's the scorecard we monitor ourselves on, or having salespeople share it with their customers as part of their account planning. There's lots of ways to embed this. That's why keeping it simple, short, impactful is really key as you roll something like this out. So I think with that, we are going to open it up to questions. Ann?
Yes.
Thank you, Carrie, very much. So we have received a couple questions already. Thank you very much, everybody. The first question is, are there common metrics most companies have on their scorecard?
You know, that's a great question, and you know, there's not like one or two that are always on a scorecard, because what you find is there are different areas where, again, that are moments of truth and pain points in every company. Not every company has a problem with how fast they answer the phone, or, you know, it might not even matter to the customers. So, but what I do see is areas. There is typically always an area around invoicing and billing. That is a very common area we see on scorecards. And again, the metric may differ depending on what the data is telling us. So it could be around the accuracy of the bill. It could be on the timeliness of their bill. They're not getting it on, they're not even getting it. So there's different things with invoicing, or, you know, usually around accuracy and timeliness. So that's a key common area. The other common area is something to do with responsiveness. And the responsiveness can, you know, come out in different ways. It could be salespeople not being responsive, because they really, some companies, the salesperson is the first line of contact, the middle line of contact, and the last line of contact. So that salesperson being responsive in those settings is a really key one. So again, responsiveness can be around a sales person, it can be around customer service, not, you know, from a first contact resolution, not getting an issue resolved. It could be around a product, just the product not, you know, being responsive and quick when you're looking for, you know, some answer in whatever the solution is. So responsiveness is a big theme, and typically invoicing is a big theme. And then the other one we're seeing a little bit more of is just the type of interaction with the customer. So in some instances, we see customers say, well, I don't have enough interaction with the company, or in some companies, it's like too much. I'm seeing too much and it's non-value add. So then there's figuring out what's the right metric to really address either ends of those on an interaction perspective.
Thank you. Next question. I just want to remind folks, if you want this presentation, you will receive a link to the recording, but if you want the presentation, throw your name in the Q&A panel, and we will send it to you after the session. So the second question we received is, do you focus on best practice by industry or by some other benchmark?
Yeah, that is a very common question on these. And, you know, my point of view on this is very clear. I don't do things by industry, and the reason why is because we as people, we don't go to our banks and then compare that experience to other banks. We actually compare that experience to anything else we do in life. I worked for B2B companies in CX roles, and I will tell you, if I spent the time trying to compare to the industry I was in, we would be mediocre at best. And so what you want to do is always, when you're building a scorecard, think about, let's take speed of answer on the phones, ASA. You don't want to say, well, in our industry, 60 seconds is great. Well, 60 seconds is terrible, quite frankly. Best practice is 10 seconds, a ring and a half. Common service level agreements are 20 seconds, 2.5 rings. So anything between 10 and 20 seconds is where you want to be. And so you can see huge differences in behavior if people get so caught up in the industry. What I would say is, depending on where you are in your performance, starting out comparing to the industry is not a bad phase one, but it should never be your point of arrival. It should be like, how do we perform as the best companies in the world perform in these areas? Because that's what people expect, you know, and so I just think of yourself as a consumer, and again, whether you're B2B or B2C, we're all humans that have way more experiences than we did 10 years ago with all sorts of transparency of how to do business. So, so I'm always more on the side of look at what best practice is regardless of the industry.
Thank you. So the next question is referring to one of the slides, that we talked about. This slide. So when you mentioned the 8 or 10 metrics to stay focused on, those 8 or 10 can change over the life of the company or over the maturity of a product or the maturity of a business line, correct? Or
yes. So that's a great question. I think, and again, this is why we call it a quick win scorecard, or you can call it whatever you'd like. But I tend to go with quick win because it sets expectations that these are going to be wins, we're going to get them done, and then we're going to find something else we need to go tackle. And I'll give you an example. In one company I was leading CX, we were a highly acquisitive company. Lots of everything, and one of the things we had lots of is phone numbers. We had over 300, 800 numbers. Now, was it the most impactful thing to go after and fix? No, not at all. But what it was is a very good symbol for, you know, from a customer lens that we know we're complex. The phone number was a representation of that. And we're going to go from 300 to 3. Now, how cool is that? So internally, people got excited and said, wow, I didn't even know we had 3, it was like 362, quite frankly. We didn't even know people even knew we had that many numbers, but the fact that we were trying to clean up and standardize and streamline things, that represented such a big shift for the company and for the customers and team members. So that was on the Quick Win Scorecard. And as soon as we were done, that came off and we had something else on it. So you do want this to be a very fluid, iterative process, but you want to keep people, you know, you want to, you know, be congratulating people on those successes and sharing those successes and capturing them. So as something comes off, you share that and you communicate what's coming onto it. So yes, keep it fluid, keep it moving, and again, it should be moving as you successfully, you know, hit certain milestones and goals that you've set.
So those are all the questions we've received so far. We've received several requests for the presentation, and so we will get those out to you. Thank you very much for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to close with?
I would just say is that, you know, this may seem simple to some of you. This may seem, you know, complex. You know, everyone's in different places. The thing I would just say is you got to start somewhere and start with, you know, what you measure today. Look, you know, inventory it. That's always the first thing I do in any environment I go into is like, send me everything you measure. I just want to see it all. And I think that you know, working to organize that and then, you know, and really then put some criteria of what's going to really end up catching your attention and where you want to put metrics, it's a great place to start. So, you know, it just takes little steps and chunks of this along the way, and you will get there. It is, but it's well worth it when you can come out and say, this is what we're measuring and this is why we're measuring it. And, you know, journey maps and survey data and financial data all come into it, and they should be, but it's then ultimately what are they all telling you you're supposed to do. And you, as, you know, the leaders in these states, need to be able to provide that guidance to the organization. So, so anyway, happy to have follow-up with anyone that wants to dive deeper, and Ann, I'll let you close.
Sure. So as part of this session, we invite you for a complimentary 30-minute meeting discussion with Carrie. And if you're interested, you can drop your name in the Q&A box. You can respond to the webinar invite to meet Ann Brinkman, A. Brinkman. You can also email Carrie directly. Her email is showing right there on the window. As a follow-up to this session, we also invite you to take our CFN Best Practice Assessment. So every company falls into one of 4 distinct performance quartiles, and the best practice assessments, it's very simple. It's 20 questions. It's online. You can go online. You can put in your information, and we'll respond to you with a report, and then Carrie will actually discuss it with you personally based on your responses. It's better if you have multiple people within your organization answer from different perspectives, different business, say business lines or business functions to answer, because everybody's perspectives are different. So that's always a good practice to have multiple best practice assessment responses. So with that, thank you for attending today's webinar. All recordings are posted on our website under Customers First Now/events. And then please join us for our next webinar with Northwestern Mutual. So they have committed to July 13th as the next session. That's a Thursday, same time. You will receive an invite because you're on our mailing list, but please block the time in now so that you're able to join. We have several members of Northwestern, as well as Jeff Miller, who leads our consulting and services practice. And with that, if you have any other questions about today's presentation, again, you can respond to the meeting invite, and you can throw your name in the window at the last minute, or you can respond back to Carrie's email that you will receive with all the links, and we will respond back to you quickly. So with that, thank you, Carrie, very much.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody, for joining. Have a terrific rest of your week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.